death, taxes, and the Los Angeles Dodgers continuing to sign the top free agent on the market. Welcome into MLB Hot Stove Daily here at the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. The Los Angeles Dodgers have struck it rich again. 4 years, $240 million to Kyle Tucker. Congratulations to the Dodgers, and once again adding the top free agent on the board after already bringing in the top closer on the market, Edwin Diaz. They ultimately are able to lure him away with the $60 million average annual value. Now, of course, I'm expecting some deferred money in this. Sounds like there's opt-outs after the second and third year. But boy, oh boy, do the Dodgers have deep pockets, and the rest of the industry better recognize that this deferred money has become a real problem, not just for the small market teams and their ability to compete to sign free agents, but now for the big market teams as well. Hit that like, subscribe, join us over on Facebook, Upside Sports Network. Whenever we do go live, we'll notify you guys there as well. But let's get into it. The Los Angeles Dodgers have struck it rich again, bringing in Kyle Tucker. Appreciate you guys joining us tonight, so let's get into it right away. 4 years, $240 million for Kyle Tucker. What exactly does this do for the rest of baseball here? We'll start in the immediate future here. Does this mean the Los Angeles Dodgers are far and away the favorites to win the World Series this year? Yes, they are. I would argue that they were before they even added Kyle Tucker. Now, there is a little bit of a risk here for the Dodgers, albeit a small one. Tucker, when healthy for the first couple of months of the season with the Cubs last year, performed very well. Then he looked like a terrible player, honestly the worst player in Major League Baseball for about a month. Primary reason for that is injury. The last couple of months of the season, things started to improve for him, but it wasn't necessarily to the level that it had been in the first half. In either event, Kyle Tucker is going to be entering this season fully healthy with the Los Angeles Dodgers, and he's not going to be counted on to be the best offensive piece in this lineup. He ain't going to be counted on to be the second best. He ain't going to be counted on to be the third. Maybe the fourth best offensive piece in this lineup will be Kyle Tucker. Tells you just how deep this offense really is. We talked about them possibly being a suitor for Kyle Tucker this offseason, about how they possibly could move on from Teoscar Hernandez in a trade to somewhere to offload that salary, make room for him as far as on that roster. I would not be surprised to see the trade market kind of kick up around him. But boy, oh boy, the Dodgers just continue to get top player after top player. And I know a lot of you guys out there right now are going, this is bad for baseball. Up till now, I would pretty much have said I would say that baseball has always functioned best with an evil empire, and that's what the Dodgers are currently functioning as. But you can still have an evil empire, team that's willing to spend gobs and gobs of money, but do it within parameters that all other teams can meet. For instance, the deferred money, other teams can do the deferred money, but not nearly to the level the Los Angeles Dodgers are taking it. And honestly, they're really pushing this thing a little far. And that's where I think the CBA negotiations are really going to come down to it here. I think the owners are going to have a little bit of infighting here as far as what they're going to try to do as far as deferred money, salary cap, salary floor. A lot of discussions, not just between players and ownership, but also between the other owners out there. So let's go ahead and check out some of these comments here. I know we got quite a few in our chat already. Mark, welcome back. Appreciate you joining us once again. Sean, Joe, Cobra, welcome in. As a Jays fan, I'm glad we didn't pay him $60 million per year. That's just ridiculous. Give me Addison Barger give Addison Barger playing time. Absolutely. Although I do think they could walk and chew gum here. I think if they were to bring in a Kyle Tucker, I think they were going to find a pathway for Barger to keep as much playing time as physically possible. I think they would have possibly looked to move on from one of those outfielders and try to figure out where they could shoehorn in Barger. But right now, the Blue Jays, you'd have to argue, are the most improved team in the American League. To not have to spend $60 million on Kyle Tucker, supposedly, that's got to be a good thing in theory. But what are you going to spend that money on? Not necessarily saying that you have to spend that money, but for a difference-making player like Kyle Tucker can be when he's right, certainly would help boost your chances to get to and win a World Series against these vaunted Dodgers. Now, as far as Barger, I still think he has a very bright future. Getting him all the playing time in the world would be paramount for me if I'm in the Blue Jays front office, and I think they'll manage to do so even if they had brought in Kyle Tucker. Sean, Jed Hoyer said the Cubs aren't done adding players. Who else should they sign? Well, they've added 5 relievers already this offseason. Now they brought in Alex Bregman, the starter, Cabrera. There is some talk about them moving on from Nico Hoerner, possibly sending him to San Francisco. San Francisco is aggressively pursuing a second baseman. That one coming from a couple of different San Francisco Giant sources. So we'll see if they go the Nico Hoerner route, if they go the Brendan Donovan route, if they go to Ketel Marte. Sounds like Ketel Marte is all but off of this market right now, so I'd expect the 2 names there to be Hoerner and Donovan if they ultimately decide to add a second baseman there. As far as the rest of the things the Cubs could do, I think in the outfield they could possibly move on from one of those outfielders, try to clear up. They could try to add another piece, I suppose, would be the best way to put it. But there is also some talk about them moving Matt Shaw to the outfield as well. So don't be surprised if the Cubs make one more big-ish move. I'm not saying Alex Bregman big, but bigger than, say, a 1-year, $5 million deal for somebody. Dodgers will win again, Joe. I am pretty much right there with you. I think if anybody is, not a fan of the Dodgers right now, which has got to be everybody who's not a Dodgers fan, so what, little more than half of Major League Baseball fans, I would say, are rooting against the Dodgers this year. You got to believe that the Dodgers are going to be the most hated team in baseball. They were already going to be that. But, baseball functions better when there's an evil empire. But will they win again? I mean, the odds of that right now, if any book is giving you plus odds on the Dodgers to win the World Series, take it. I mean, at this point, they're just giving away money. Why play the season? I guess injuries happen. We saw the last couple of seasons how the rotation ultimately looked once you got to October. Yamamoto was world changing anyway for them. You have Glasnow there. There's possibility of Skubal still getting moved this offseason. I don't think it'll happen, but we never say never with the Dodgers here anymore. But just this Dodgers team just looks inevitable right now. They are Thanos in Major League Baseball. Cubs versus Dodgers, NLCS. That's got a very nice ring to it. I would not be surprised if the Mets try to, throw or cast their baton in there. Same thing with the Phillies. I think you're going to have a nice, reasonable case there. The Brewers, don't count out the Brewers. They're, still got some moves to do there with Freddie Peralta, and we'll see what they decide to bring in after moving on from him. Cobra, lockout happening for sure. I would put it at probably about 90% sure that it's happening at this point. And that's not just between the owners and players there. I think the owners themselves have got to do some housekeeping there and figure out what they want to do as an ownership group. What are all these teams wanting to do? Do they want the salary cap? Do they want the salary floor? Do they want to close up deferred money? What do they do with draft cap, or what do they do with the draft itself? What do they do with an international draft? Something that was supposed to have gotten done within a couple of weeks after this last CBA negotiations. Guarantee it will be a part of this year's negotiations that they won't finish this CBA until they hammer out those details as well. It's not just players and owners here. I think it's going to be a little bit of infighting between both sides here. The Cubs deferred some money for Bregman. What does that do for them? Not too much. We knew they were going to do a little bit here. 5 for $175 there is what the deal was for Bregman. Ended up being 5 years in present day value for around $150 to $155 million in present day value. Basically just frees them up a little bit more money here to kind of tinker around the edges of this roster. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to add another $30+ million salary, but does give them some flexibility. Also, we've talked about this for years, about the Cubs aren't necessarily the most willing to spend on long-term big salary players. This was kind of a step forward for them in that front office. And this, 5-year deal isn't necessarily a 7 or 8 year term, which is good for them. And the term isn't bad for them either. So a deal that was certainly needed for the Cubs as far as being able to show their fan base they're willing to spend on this team once again. Something that we haven't really seen since they busted up this team that had Chris Bryant and Javi Baez and that group, Kyle Schwarber. Since that team got broken up, anyway, this Cubs team hasn't really been the same. This has been the first real big increase in their salary besides Dansby Swanson in recent memory. All right, Andrew, so this means Toronto turns to Bo Bichette and the Phillies lose out. I'm not so sure about that. I think the Blue Jays will try to bring back Bo Bichette right now. Phillies are going to be a very strong contender. The reason being is because they're willing to do long-term deals. The one factor the Phillies have used in past negotiations is their willingness to spread out that average annual value over a longer term deal. So if they could offer him, say, a 7-8 year deal, while say the Blue Jays might be more comfortable with a 5 or 6 year deal, maybe the Phillies are able to pull this one out. I would not be surprised as well. Josh, Dodgers, Joseph, welcome in. Are the Tigers going to, or are the Tigers going next to get traded? Do I think the Tigers are going to make a trade next? No. I do think they're going to hear more offers, more ideas around Scooball as we gear up towards pitchers and catchers reporting, but I just don't think anything's going to happen there. This is a free agency case, I think, at this point for the Detroit Tigers. Are they going to be the team that's willing to spend above and beyond what's necessary to be able to keep him in Detroit, or are they going to allow him to walk and take the compensation pick? I don't think they trade him at the deadline unless they are absolutely out of the playoff picture, which I don't see happening either. I think the Tigers are a good bet to make the postseason this upcoming year. All right, try to catch up on a few more of these comments. Dodgers. Toronto back. Let's see here. Ethan, welcome in. Easy three-peat. I wouldn't say easy, but I would say they're definitely the favorites now to be the first three-peat in, several decades now? What is the difference between the Dodgers and the Mets offer? Will they now shift their pursuit to Bellinger? The difference was the Mets were offering, I believe, 4 years at $50 million in average annual value. The Dodgers were offering $60 million, so they were a little bit higher. Obviously, the deferred money was the difference there as well. We'll see what those numbers ultimately turn out to be here in just a few moments. LA has boosters. I don't care what people say and opinions on it. It isn't just the owners paying players. To a certain extent, I'll agree with you as far as the different advertising avenues LA players do have. You look at Shohei Ohtani, he can get paid from his international advertising all on its own and be more than what his actual contract is with the Dodgers. Now, they do have very marketable players on a very marketable team, on a team that's won back-to-back World Series now, possibly 3 in a row this year. This is a very good team, and I know the rest of baseball is going to hate it, but this is probably one of the best teams ever constructed. I know everybody wants to look back to the early days of the Yankees, 1920s, 1930s, and say those were some of the best teams with Babe Ruth and others, Lou Gehrig. The best team in baseball that we've ever seen might just be in LA this upcoming season. The Cubs deferred some money on Bregman. Yes, they did. Let's see here. Thank you for the $2 super chat there. Really do appreciate that, VPCZX. Welcome back. Appreciate you joining us once again. Been a minute since I've seen you in our chat. Baffled? I am right there with you. I mean, if Passan reported, 3 weeks ago, right after the winter meetings, that the Blue Jays were the favorites to land not one, but two of Bellinger, Tucker, Bregman, and Bichette. The only two options left are Bellinger and Bichette, and I don't think they're getting both of those. Obviously, they added Okamoto since that prediction was made, but I really thought Tucker was going to take the long-term security. But you look at the offer of what the Los Angeles Dodgers were offering here. 4 years, $240 million. We posted this question about a week ago talking about which deal would you take if you're Kyle Tucker. 4 for $50 million in average annual value from the Dodgers, or would you take a 10-year, $350 million deal from the Blue Jays? That would have been a very close decision. This wasn't close. If the offer turned out to be 10 for $350 from the Blue Jays, no kidding, I would take this deal as well if I'm Kyle Tucker. You look at his future years here, even if he does play all 4 years with the Dodgers and doesn't opt out after years 2 and 3. Say he plays all 4 years there. That means he's got 6 years left to make up the remaining 110. You think Kyle Tucker is not going to be able to make that up? He's going to be able to. He is going to have a couple of World Series rings by that point. We're probably looking at this Dodgers team winning probably, another 2 World Series out of the next 4 minimum? Minimum? We're talking about probably one of the greatest dynasties in professional sports, in modern professional sports history. We're talking, Warriors in the mid-2010s. We're talking Yankees in the early 2000s, late 90s. We're talking, Miami for a couple of years, but this would certainly top them all. The Patriots in the NFL, the Blackhawks, the Kings in the NHL in the early 2000s, 2010s as well. This is probably the best modern dynasty we will see in our lifetimes. Unless sports change, drastically in the next 50 years, this might be one of the greatest runs of championships we see for the rest of our lives. So let's sure acknowledge that things are really tilted right now in the Dodgers' favor, but let's also realize that this is a team that is not just meant for destiny, but will be creating their own destiny and writing just how far they want to go each and every season. Hopefully the CBA can kind of even the playing field just a little bit here over the next couple of years, but the Dodgers on paper look like the behemoth that they should be for the next probably 5 to 7 years, at least until Shohei Ohtani's deal is up. All right, let's try to catch up on a few more of these comments. Sarah, welcome in. I'm glad the Cardinals' Bloom is getting smart, getting rid of older vets. I like going younger. They've needed that for about a year and a half now. They kind of had a roster cluttered with, older veterans, yes, but guys that just were stuck playing behind these older veterans and being forced to play not their natural position. So I like that they're actually, giving their spots to these younger players and finally allowing them a chance to really bloom. We'll see if things work out the way they should, in theory, there in St. Louis. Who's your Super Bowl picks? I believe my picks were the Seahawks on the NFC side, and I believe the Texans were my pick on the AFC side. Or no, it was the Patriots were my pick on the AFC side, with the Seahawks winning it all. That means Toronto gets Bo as a Phillies fan. This is not good. I do think there's a good chance the Phillies still end up with Bichette. I don't think the Phillies are going to be going to 7 or 8 years for Bichette, and I think the Phillies may ultimately go that way. That's what they've done in the past to win their guys. Remember, they did that with Bryce Harper. We'll see if they do it again here with Bo Bichette. What if Freddie Peralta doesn't get traded and Brewers keep him? And a 3-team trade just happened? Yes, we did see a 3-team trade. We'll get into that here in just a moment. But I do think Freddie Peralta will go. There's too much smoke here. I think that a team like the Mets is probably the most likely for him, but don't be surprised if he goes to another contender looking for a number 1, number 2 type starter as well. Where's Bichette going to sign? If I had to pick right now, I would lean Philadelphia. I would not have said that a week ago, but as of right now, I would probably lean Philadelphia more than any of the other teams. Probably put Blue Jays second in that running. I don't think the Red Sox will get it done, although they are in the running. Same thing with the Yankees. Mets, I haven't heard too much at all with Bo Bichette, but, they just missed out on Kyle Tucker. Anything is possible. Arif, welcome back. Appreciate you joining us as well. Do you think Dave will tell John Middleton we need to find money to go get Bo Bichette and bring back JT? They're going to bring back JT. The terms of a deal that they've been discussing for 2 months now were just released. That the offer on the table to JT Realmuto is for 3 years. Maybe he is holding out for 4 years. We shall see. Bichette going back to the Dodgers next. We shall see. I just don't think he's going to go to the Dodgers. I think this was the big expenditure. I do expect some activity from the Dodgers around Teoscar Hernandez as well. Got quite a few comments in our chat here. Try to catch up with them. Is Teoscar Hernandez available now? Yes, he is, Ethan. Johnny, hey, Michael. What's up, Dodgers back to doing the same old business? Yes, they are. Death, taxes, and the Dodgers adding the top free agent on the board. Anthony, so are you sticking to your prediction, Michael, that you believe Sandy gets traded before pitchers and catchers, or do you think they wait until after spring training before the season starts? Well, they just traded Weathers to the Yankees for 4 pieces. Don't really like too many of the pieces that went to the Marlins in the deal, but it is a grab bag full of prospects. So one of them probably will pan out for them. It's kind of a back end of the rotation piece in Weathers anyway to me. So getting 4 pieces for him, they went kind of the quantity approach, kind of like the Rangers did with Joey Gallo in years past. Rangers are happy with the quantity over quality approach that they used. I think the Marlins are trying to do something similar here with the Weathers trade. Now, as far as Sandy Alcantara, they've already traded away 2 starters. I would not be surprised if they moved him before pitchers and catchers. Would I say it's likely? Honestly, I'm 50-50 on it. It is that close. I do think they will move him certainly before the end of the year. I doubt it gets to the trade deadline, but we shall see. John Heyman, Tucker's Dodgers deal has $30 million in deferrals. That's all that got deferred there? Wow. That's eyebrow raising. Only $30 million was deferred. Wow. That bidding between the Mets and Dodgers must have gotten insane in the final stages of that negotiation. Got to wonder if the Verizon thing yesterday helped cause some of the hand wringing between both of those teams as they were putting in their best and last offers. I imagine they had other ways of communicating besides just Verizon. But man, just $60 million. Just wow. That's Shohei Ohtani, just for frame of reference, 10 years, $700 million. With deferrals in that deal, present day value is around $43 million per season. With the deferrals in this deal, what's the present day value going to be? $51, $52 million? A la Juan Soto? That's incredible money. Your honest opinion, what side of the negotiations wants to take deferred payments away? Is it the owners or players? That would definitely be the owners. Players want more money, however they can get it. Owners, small market teams, mid-market teams, and now I'm guessing some of the bigger market teams are going to have a problem with the way the Los Angeles Dodgers are using that deferred money. So it's going to be the owners that are going to want to try to close up that loophole a little bit here, or at least limit it, but we shall see. Got about 21 of you guys with us right now. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for the super chat we got earlier, VPCXZ, or VPZZX, I believe was the name. But I do appreciate you guys and all your support tonight. We're going to try to get into a bunch of different stories here in just a few moments. 60 a year is insane, Fig. Absolutely, at least to our American champs. Let's see here. Chicago Bulls, possibly the Florida Panthers. Yeah, I mean, you're looking, what, with the Michael Jordan Bulls, 2 3-peats in, 8 years total? A year and a half he was gone or whatever. Still proud of the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays did do pretty dang good this offseason. They had a really good offseason. Do I wish they had gotten Kyle Tucker? Yes. But I think their offseason was probably the best in the sport outside of maybe the Dodgers at this point. And that's because they did 2 things. Just 2 things for the Dodgers. What's the 3-team trade that just happened? Let's go ahead and pull it up for you guys. The deal there, Kyle Tucker, 4 years, $240 million, opt-outs after the second and third year. No new update there. This was the Weathers deal from the other night. Anyway, Weathers to the Yankees in exchange for Dylan Lewis, Brandon Jones, Dylan Jesso, and Juan Matthias. Basically, you are eating up one roster spot, it looks like. But the deal itself was kind of, like I said, a grab bag full of pieces. Lewis is viewed as the best piece in that. Jones fairly close behind. Let's see here. Arenado was traded from the Cardinals to the Diamondbacks in exchange for 8th round draft pick in 2025. They're basically only going to pay $11 million of the deal, with the Cardinals paying the remaining $31 million. Not a bad deal overall for the Diamondbacks, and I think the Cardinals just basically freeing up the roster spot, finally getting Arenado out of town, and basically they're getting a free, throw-in prospect here to kind of allow him to go to Arizona. Not a bad deal for both sides, but I think the Diamondbacks did really good solving their third base need right there with that move. The Red Sox added Ranger Suarez on a 5-year, $130 million deal, mutual option in 2031. A great deal for the Red Sox as it really accentuates their strength now being that starting rotation. We'll see how far this team can go. I still think they have a hole over there at second and third. We'll see if they add a Suarez-type player. There was some talk about them bringing in Bo Bichette. Would not be surprised if those talks are rekindled as well. Let's see here. The 3-team deal that we were mentioning anyway. Josh Lowe goes to the Angels. Gavin Lux goes from Cincinnati to Tampa alongside Chris Clark. And then Cincinnati somehow ends up with only Brock Burke in this deal. I think they're getting the short end of this deal in my opinion. But overall, interesting move. Rays, I think, trying to add a little bit more payroll anyway by bringing on Gavin Lux's salary here. As far as Cincinnati bringing in a lefty reliever, I think this is more roster clearing for them and then adding another bullpen piece for them. Nothing too major, but it is kind of a nice shuffling of the deck chairs, if you will. Angels, I think, did really well in this deal as well, bringing in Josh Lowe for only the cost of Brock Burke. If Lowe can establish himself on the West Coast, he could be a very nice trade candidate for them in the long run, or a piece that helps them to their next winning team. All right, this is the Dodgers adding Kyle Tucker. Let's see if they have the. Yep, there's the John Heyman news there. The $30 million in deferred money. Just really surprising that it's only $30 million in deferrals here. Just really surprised that it's not a much higher number. All right, let's try to catch up on a few more of these comments here. What is the three-team trade? Yes, that was the one we just showed you, Andrew. I'm Heel. Welcome in. Bruno Mars released a new song. Yankees aren't getting aren't getting big free agents, and no Chiefs in the playoffs. 2026 is starting off fantastic. It's a very different year already. I will say that. I'm not even going to mention all the non-sports related stuff because again, I don't want this to be a political channel. I don't want that to be what this channel is about at all. But that stuff's already been crazy. You look at the stuff in the sports world. All the trade stuff just around Anthony Davis has been insane. On the baseball side of things, the winter meetings was absolutely dead. Not really any activity up until until New Year's, and then right after New Year's, we finally get a flood of activity here. Two of the top 5 free agents have now signed in the last, I would call it the last 72 hours here. Ranger Suarez as well, another top 10 guy. Just a really active period of time here in Major League Baseball. NFL playoffs, of course, going on. NBA draft stuff, being thrown around because, again, it's going to be one of the best drafts in recent memory anyway. Wembanyama is probably the best of the last 20 years as far as what he was able to bring. But this draft has a very comparable, talent pool to the 2003 one when we got LeBron, D. Wade, Carmelo, all of them in the same draft. This draft could be the closest one to that in a very long time. Not saying it'll be better than LeBron's class, but I think it has the potential to be a similar style of class where there are so many great players in it as well. Just an incredible, start to 2026 already. Could the Cubs sign someone like Scherzer or Verlander? Honestly, I think that's the route I would go at this point if I'm the Cubs. I think they've already spent quite a bit right now in free agency. I think they've done enough on the trade front with bringing in Edward Cabrera. I think there's an opportunity for them to, clear up some roster, flexibility issues by trading somebody from that outfield mix or the infield mix, however they want to do it. Just one of those pieces I think could be traded for another elite bullpen arm or possibly another starter. But if they decide to hold on to those pieces, bringing in a Scherzer or Verlander, I think it'd be a nice get and it would kind of fit along the profile or along the lines of what they've done in recent memory. Short-term, low-cost guys with high potential. Both of those guys have elite pedigrees and could really bring something to that rotation for at least a couple of months until they get Steele and others, acclimated to being starting pitchers once again. They got a couple of good young starters in that rotation right now. If things don't work out, or if once again Verlander or Scherzer gets injured, obviously they'd have the depth to fill those spots if and when they do get hurt. The 3-team trade, that was the one we just mentioned with Lux going to the Rays, Lowe going to the Angels, and Burke going to the Reds. When does Bellinger and Bichette sign? At this point, it's Thursday the 15th right now. I would say Bellinger is probably the most likely one next, primarily because he was waiting on this Tucker deal to get done. Bregman got done before that, but I think he's the next big guy on the market. I would expect one of the 2 New York teams to get it done, although the Yankees sound like they're at an impasse. They're still trying to structure all kinds of different types of deals to see if he'll bite on something a little different than what they may have already offered. But it sounds like they're expecting him to sign elsewhere. To me, that would lead me to believe the Mets here would be the team. Then now that they've missed on Kyle Tucker, expect them to put their full force into signing Cody Bellinger. Now, is that the right player? Should they try to bring in Valdez first rather than Bellinger? That's up for debate. But I do think they, along with the Yankees, will be the favorites to sign him. I think the Bichette rumors are a little bit more convoluted. I think there's more teams in the mix on there. I think that market will be a little bit longer there to crystallize now that more teams are in the market for Bo Bichette than there were just a week ago. When will this Bo Bichette signing happen? And with this news, as a Phillies fan, go get Bo right now. And JT, no excuses. They're going to get JT Realmuto. That's just going to happen, period. Now, as far as Bo Bichette, I think they're going to have some stiff competition now between both the Yankees and the Mets, the Red Sox and the Blue Jays, and now, of course, if they can get that deal done in Philadelphia. So I just think all those teams are going to be in that market there, and I think that's why it's going to take a little bit longer. But I do think Bellinger's market will be a little easier to crystallize. Real Muto, I think the teams that were in on him have already made their decisions as far as a catcher, and I think he will end up signing the deal the Phillies are comfortable with on a 3-year term. Maybe they do a mutual option to make it more palatable for him, but mutual options are basically a void year on back ends of Major League Baseball deals. Basically, if the player has a great season, he's obviously opting out, and the team would opt in. He would then become a free agent. If he has a terrible year, the team would opt out anyway, as far as allowing him to go to free agency, and the player would opt in. That would mean he goes to free agency as well. So basically, when you see a mutual option, just think of it as a void year in the back end of the deal, just to make the numbers look a little bit prettier. Very rarely do you see a mutual option picked up, and I think in the case of Bo Bichette, or in the case of a Bo Bichette or a JT Realmuto, those are not the types of players you see mutual options end up getting agreed to, or at least picked up anyway. I don't expect, or you didn't expect Ranger to Boston. Neither did I. I thought the Orioles would get that one done, or the Mets, maybe back to the Phillies, but I did not see the Red Sox as the team for Suarez. Sounds like they pivoted once they lost on Bregman and tried to make the best rotation that they could, a la Juan Soto going to the Mets, and the Yankees bringing in Max Fried last year. Rays, Angels, and Reds were involved in the trade. Yes, they were. Mets pivot to Framber. You think they do? I think they're still going to try to push hard for Bellinger, even though I would push for the starter first. Lux and pieces, yes. Where are Bassett and Scherzer going? If I had to guess, Chris Bassett probably goes to either the Braves or Rangers. Scherzer, I think he's going to probably try to go back to the Blue Jays. I doubt he signs there. I think the Cubs are a legitimate possibility. I think the Mets are a legitimate possibility as well. But he will sign somewhere. I don't think the Yankees are now that team either because of the addition of Ryan Weathers. Scratch off the Red Sox as a possible fit. I doubt the Giants could make it work, but I wouldn't rule it out completely. Never rule out the Dodgers from anything, but if I had to guess, I would lean more towards the Cubs. I don't think the White Sox because he wants to play for a contender. Cleveland, I doubt. But maybe if he's not able to sign a deal with a contender that he knows has a legitimate chance at a World Series, maybe he takes a flyer on a team like the Guardians. Cubs, Ian Happ, trade spots. Welcome in, Chris. Appreciate you joining us. John, welcome in. Ian Happ, pretty much anywhere really as far as outfield help. You're seeing so many teams try to look for a third, fourth outfielder right now. I think there's like 4 different teams looking for a right-handed hitting outfielder. Ian Happ could fill one of those spots as far as an outfield help guy. As far as where, I doubt the Mariners. They're one team looking for an outfielder. Rangers make a little bit of sense because they need to improve this offense, and they've done really nothing aside from letting guys go, essentially, in one trade, bringing back Nimmo and letting Simeon leave. They haven't really done anything to address this offense. They could be waiting for the market to come down a little bit more on Luis Suarez and other players. We shall see. But they're kind of a team waiting in the weeds. But as far as Ian Happ, there's so many teams he could really go to. His market, I think, is going to take a little bit of time. And again, I don't think there's any real push for the Cubs to make that move right now. Bo Bichette is happy now because his market went up. Absolutely. He went from a guy who might be left without a chair having to sing for his supper with a team like the Nationals, to now having 5 of the biggest markets in the game in his market here. So he's going to do very well in free agency, much better than I thought he was going to do originally. You can see the Mets signing Framber and Bellinger now. I think that's ultimately where it will go. Present day value of Tucker's deal will be $57 million. Wow. That coming from Ken Rosenthal. Wow. Will Isaac Paredes be traded in the next 3 days? I'm going to lean towards no. I think their preference would be Walker, but I think the guy that they might have to deal if they're trying to clear up their infield a little bit would be Paredes. There are so many teams that could use a bat like his at first or third. They could get a nice piece in return for him as far as a bullpen arm or prospects or whatever the case may be. He is the more valuable of the two, but I think their preference would be to move on from Christian Walker. But I think that market will take just a little bit more time to crystallize, especially with Bellinger still out there on the market. Will the Phillies go after Valdez or Zach Gallen? Valdez, no. Gallen, I wouldn't rule it out. I'll put it that way. Will the Yankees, what will the Yankees' next move be? If I had to guess, they're still waiting on Bellinger as far as the offensive piece. They could use some bullpen arms to me. Bullpen's the easiest cop-out answer, but I'll say they add Bellinger or a replacement for Bellinger in this lineup. Paredes to Boston is close. That would be an interesting one. Let me go ahead and check out Twitter just to see if anything is happening on that front. There's that three-team trade we mentioned. The present-day value of Tucker's deal beats the record of Soto by more than $6 million. Wow. So the Dodgers lose their second, third, fifth, and sixth highest picks in the draft for signing Diaz and now Tucker. Do they care? Hell no. Mets best offer 4 for $220, according to Jim Duquette. Wow. That bidding got insane between those teams. International Signing Day today. Lots of signings there. The Rockies made a deal today. They brought in Willie Castro on a 2-year deal. Rockies have had a nice couple of months here. To me, they've had to shake up that front office. They did. I like what they've done so far, and they kind of got a kind of a red shirt year for their new chief baseball guy in DePodesta since he's coming back over from the NFL side of things, but kind of letting him kind of get his feet wet again in the baseball side of things. But they've had a nice offseason, kind of getting some MLB ready players. Jake McCarthy from the Diamondbacks and now Willie Castro, at least MLB level players as opposed to quad A or triple A players trying to make it work out there in Colorado. So they've at least raised the floor there in Colorado. This Anthony Davis trade rumor is wild. He still might get moved. I think he will get moved. I would almost put it at 100% right now. Anthony Davis gets traded. I think the Mavericks want out of that business. I think the only way this thing doesn't get done is basically the offers are terrible. Would have to be the first part of the thing. 2 is that they look at an extension with Anthony Davis and they say, hey, if we're not getting the offers we like right now, would you be open to an extension in, say, the $40 million range? That would be something I think the Mavericks could find more palatable, especially if their top pick turns into, say, a top 4 pick, and then they could partner, AJ DeBentis, Cooper Flagg, Kyrie Irving, the ghost of Derek Lively, and then AD there and try to make it work. And then they could obviously try to flip him in the in the offseason as well. There's lots of avenues forward to do that if they decide to wait. But for me, this saga's got to end. There's so many teams that are in on it. There are so many teams that make sense for a trade right now because of the ability to try to use him as like a Brandon Ingram type of a trade, where you're basically trying to buy him for next year. There's the trade candidates out there on the Eastern Conference trying to push to the NBA Finals in a kind of a gap year with the Boston Celtics not having Jason Tatum, and yet they're still number 2 in the East. Tells you just how wide open the East really is. So lots of crazy things can still happen there with Anthony Davis. Yankees are looking at Luis Suarez. I really want Texas to get him. I would not be surprised if he went to the Yankees. He'd be a different type of a player than what they've signed in the past, but I think he'd be vital to what they are really working with right now and kind of be a, hopefully a sign of things to come for the Yankees if they were to get him. I hope Texas gets him as a Texas Rangers fan, but I'm just not sure they're willing to spend the money until they at least clear up some of their roster flexibility issues at first, second, and the DH spot. Plus, Canada got 2 feet of snow today. Sounds like a great snow day, honestly. Safety first, of course, with all the traffic and all those kinds of things, obviously. But that's a lot of snow. I know Alaska's been hammered by it. Juneau's had a state of emergency now because basically the city's been buried by snow up there in Alaska, and I mean buried. Like, emergency services, all that stuff is basically offline for the last week because of it. So kind of a scary situation up there. So hopefully everybody's safe. Lots of washouts from not natural rivers, I'll put it that way. Basically melting ice, melting snow, causing all kinds of mud and landslides in the area. So hopefully you guys are safe up there in the north. I'm Heel. Appreciate the $2 super chat, by the way, once again. Appreciate you. I'm healed. When the lockout happens, they need to make draft picks more valuable because you can tell teams don't care about losing them if they buy an MLB ready player. Well, the draft picks are never going to be nearly as valuable as a regular player, let alone a prospect. Or I should say, the MLB player is the most valuable because he's already proven commodity. Then you have the prospect, who is the former draft guy, who still has some value after the draft and has certainly learned more on the job and has kind of progressed through the system and might eventually make it to being part of the big club. Then you look at the guys that are draft eligible and draft picks. Those draft picks are never going to be as valuable as, say, the actual MLB player or the top prospect. So kind of keep that in mind. Now, I do like the idea of making draft picks tradable, just because I never understood why teams could not trade them to begin with, why small market teams couldn't try to trade some of those picks in order to acquire talent, period. It's all about talent acquisition. MLB managers, general managers, are not as crazy as they used to be. There's no Mike Ditka going, hey, I want Ricky Williams. I'm willing to trade my entire draft just to get Ricky Williams on my team. Baseball owners don't really do that anymore. I mean, the days of the 80s where you'd have guys meeting in the lobby at 3 a.m. at the winter meetings, having drunken trade discussions, and finally agreeing to a deal that they never should agree to in their right mind, those days are over. Those things don't happen. That's why there's all this groupthink in Major League Baseball. So teams are going to handle those things a lot more judiciously than ever in history, and I think they should have all their tools at their disposal to make any and all trades that they should feel are necessary. Now, as far as making draft pick compensation worth it to teams that lose these top players, that's something I'm sure they'll discuss in the CBA. Will Brendan Donovan get moved by St. Louis by the season, and can Bader come back to the Phillies? I don't think they're going to add another outfielder. Sounds like Philadelphia is set in their outfield. They said that already earlier this offseason, about a month ago. Bichette's kind of, I think, a one-off here. They want to have another impact bat. I think they're trying to, trying to solve their free agency needs a year early on Alec Boehm and allow him to leave in free agency, or possibly trade him if they sign a Bo Bichette. But for the time being, I think they're just trying to improve their roster. Now, as far as will Donovan get moved by St. Louis, I think he will. I think St. Louis is right there, the Mariners are right there. The Red Sox are going to be right there. Giants are also in on that one. I do think we will get a Brendan Donovan trade sooner rather than later. Certainly by the deadline. I would not be surprised if it was before pitchers and catchers. Spring training, possibly. But I think if we get to spring training, we're more likely going to see it more at the deadline. But as far as Bader, he's not going to go back to the Phillies. I hope the Rangers or Astros get Bellinger, even though I know it's not going to happen. I would love that for Texas. He is exactly the type of player that kind of very emblematic of the team they're trying to build offensively right now. Are the Reds going to get players in the next 2 to 3 weeks? They're going a lot of moves in free agency and trades, I think. I do think the Reds will be very active. They're kind of waiting for these big guys to settle here, and then the rest of the market will move fairly quickly thereafter. Who will be the Eagles' offensive coordinator? If I'm Mike McDaniel, I don't take another head coaching job. I take the OC job in Philadelphia if I'm able to have full control over the offense. If I don't, I'd probably pass up on that one. I think he's probably going to end up getting a head coaching job anyway. Other names to kind of consider, I think Cliff Kingsbury was in on that one. I would like him to go there. I don't really see them having a true answer outside of those two, though. I don't really trust any of these no-name coordinators to come up and solve their issues. But we'll see. They should update the new CBA to trade draft picks with the new lottery system. Would be very cool. Kind of my thoughts as well. All right, let's try to check out Twitter just to see if anything else is happening at the moment. $64 million in signing bonus. $54 million of it is up front. Okay. Nothing else too crazy there. All right, let's go through a couple of these other headlines, and then we'll get into some trade talk here. We'll kind of recap on the Kyle Tucker stuff, and then we'll probably head out for the evening. This was the headline I was mentioning earlier with your Chicago Cubs there, Sean, that they could use Matt Shaw in the outfield. They have Nico Horner, obviously, over there at second base. Bregman's going to be your everyday third baseman, so there's not really a spot for Shaw in the infield unless you move Horner. So if you don't move Horner, then you possibly use Shaw as both a super utility guy in the infield or in the outfield. I did hear Brian Dable as well. Matt Shaw, I think, would be more valuable as a trade commodity, though. If you're trying to compete this upcoming season, though, you want to have that valuable ace up your sleeve, super utility guy like a Matt Shaw on your roster. But I think if you get a really good trade offer for Matt Shaw, you'd be open to trading him more so now with Bregman in the fold than you would have at any point in the past. As far as Horner, I wouldn't rule out an extension at some point. I don't think that extension would be very costly for them, especially with the contracts they've just signed. I think they could easily get that type of a deal done. All right, the Rockies, as I mentioned, have had a nice couple of weeks here this offseason. They signed Willie Castro, 2-year deal, gets essentially 12.8. Really good deal for a player that's kind of a super utility guy that can literally plug him anywhere in that lineup, infield or outfield. Really like what he brings to the table as far as a professional player. And now with Jake McCarthy, who's certainly had his struggles last year, but at least could hold down a corner outfield spot for a couple weeks here. His base running is off the charts. I think he's in the 99th percentile anytime he's at the big league level. And so it gives him a real speed element here. So I think the Rockies are going to utilize the strengths here and try to use that speed with that big field. The ball travels in Colorado. We've talked about that for decades. But I think they're really putting a nice team, at least with a solid floor, out there on the field. And I think this is the first steps in the right direction for the Colorado Rockies in probably the last 5 years. It's been a while since I've actually been complimentary of what the Rockies have done. So I'm excited to see what this team looks like in, say, 3 years, but at least the groundwork is being laid to not have to force those guys, the AAA guys, the AA guys, up to the big league club when they're not ready and absolutely ruining them. Could Tucker to the Dodgers team could trade for Marte? Could the Dodgers trade for Marte? No. Could the Mets trade for him? No. There's not really a fit. Although I did hear them earlier this offseason, even after the addition of Simeon. Not really sure who you're referring to as the Tucker. Who could Tucker to the Dodgers team trade for Marte? I don't think the Dodgers would trade for Marte, though. Yankees need Bellinger now. They've needed offense basically since Soto left. They tried to patch it together with Goldschmidt and Bellinger last year. It worked for a time, but they needed to get better. This offseason was about them trying to get better than what they had last year. And right now, you would argue their offense is worse. I think this front office and Hal Steinbrenner has been pretty stingy this offseason, out of character for the Yankees. They talked about needing to be more fiscally responsible. They're certainly doing that, and I think the Yankee faithful are going to let them hear it as well. Breaking news, Ja has been traded to the Celtics. What? Why? That's a terrible contract. Unless you're getting out of another bad contract, but Boston doesn't really have any bad ones. We'll check that out here in just a moment. I get the Dodgers are trying to win now, but are they going to owe players so much money when this dynasty is over? They're going to owe a hefty bill when everything comes due. But they're literally raking in money. If I could fill this room up to money up to here, that's basically what the Dodgers are doing. Is they can't even put all their money in their bank account fast enough before they have to try to scoop it all in again. They're making so much money right now, they'll be able to pay these contracts no problem. Advertising revenue alone is off the charts. They'll be able to pay it probably with just that advertising revenue. Does this make the Celtics the team to beat in the East? I'm going to go ahead and check that out. I'm curious to see if that's real or fake. I didn't get a notification on it, so I'm going to go with fake for now. Clay had a nice trade deadline game for him. So did Najee. Anthony Simons. There is no Ja trade to the Celtics. Sorry. Terry, welcome in. Peralta 2. I don't think the Yankees are going to get Peralta. I think their Ryan Weathers move was the only addition they'll make at this point to the starting rotation. I would not be surprised if they added a swingman, a guy that can take the ball, say as the sixth or seventh starter. But I don't think they're adding a Freddie Peralta. I saw the Mets fans are going crazy with this Tucker signing. I would imagine so. I would imagine so. All right, let's check out our notifications, see if anything else is happening. Jeff Passan. Full details. 4 years, 240. Opt-outs after the second and third year. $64 million signing bonus, $30 million deferred. 57.1 year average annual value with deferrals counted in. Biggest deal ever based on average annual value. Wow. Even beats that of Shohei, beats that of Juan Soto. Dombrowski is trolling. Appreciate you joining us, corporate. All right, got about a couple minutes left here of our live. I wanted to kind of touch on the NBA trade deadline here before we head out and kind of recap the Tucker stuff here in just a moment. But if you guys are new here, be sure to hit that like, subscribe, find us on Facebook, Upside Sports Network, if you guys want to be notified when we do go live. I know YouTube pushes out a few notifications a day, but every now and again, some of you guys don't get those notifications. So if you want to follow us on Facebook as well, we do post when we do go live. You guys wonder what I'm doing when that screen says starting soon? I'm literally just sharing it on Facebook, sending it out on Twitter, those kinds of things. So if you guys want to follow us, please feel free to do so. Hit that like. Those hearts in the chat are always helpful. Thank you for those as well. The super chats tonight, just want to say thank you for those. Really do appreciate the support you guys give us. I know those of you up in the north anyway are having a little bit of a cold snap, to say the least. And hopefully you guys aren't too snowed in up there in Canada. Your Sixers need a power forward who can shoot a basketball. They've got a couple of good wings up there in Philadelphia now. I really like the way they've kind of rebuilt this team on the fly. Tyrese Maxey, and VJ Edgecombe are great as guards. I really like your wing depth that you have there with Wofford and I want to say Edwards as well. They could use a power forward, although they got three centers that they're using: Bona, Embiid, and Drummond. Maybe more of a bigger wing. Maybe move Paul George to your 4 spot at this point. But we'll see what this team looks like. I mean, you got Kelly Oubre as well in that team. That Sixers team is looking much, much better than expected. And you still have really bad contracts in George and Embiid. But even with those contracts, you're still finding ways to win. So great job there. B. Lee, Mitch Marner is getting loudly booed in Vegas by the Leaf fans. It's much louder than their own fan cheers. Well, I mean, it's Vegas. I mean, it's always a kind of a transient facility there. A lot of Canadians kind of come down to Vegas anyway for their vacation, so we knew it was going to be more of a hostile environment when the Toronto team came into town, but we'll see. All our power forwarders shoot in the 20s. I'm still saying you got a really good team. I mean, as far as the Sixers right now, I'd not be surprised if they get into the second round of the playoffs. I think Philadelphia's got a really nice rookie campaign out of VJ Edgecombe, and Tyrese Maxey looks like the real deal. Let's see here. Saw Jaw wants to go to the Heat. I did hear that. I saw he also bought a house in Miami for a little over $3 million, so I think that's probably a deal that does get done. I think they could do it rather easily. And then next year he's an expiring if they decide to go even bigger fish shopping, those kinds of things if it doesn't work out with Ja. Cody Bellinger step up to the plate. Bob Nightingale. All right. Hopefully we get a Bellinger deal here in the next 24 hours. That'd be pretty sweet. If it's this bad at home for him, it's going to be unbearable in 9 days in Toronto. I mean, I'm not sure about that. I mean, the Maple Leafs had him. They had a chance to bring him back, and he's really shown how valuable he was to that team. Toronto really hadn't gotten out of their own way since he left. I mean, Matthews looks like a shell of himself. Just saying, yes, he left. But, I mean, you guys were not very appreciative of him when you had him. Of course, that's always the case with the Maple Leafs fans. It's kind of like the Yankees fans or Knicks fans. They're always going to be harder on those ball clubs. The media pressure there is more intense for the Yankees. Same thing for the Maple Leafs there in Toronto. You're calling it now Bellinger to the Jays for 175. He ain't getting 175. He already turned down 210. He turned down 210 from the Yankees. He's beating 7 for 175. They're 10-1-2 in their last 13. You're telling me they're finally getting out of their own way? I mean, Toronto was terrible for the first couple of months of the season. This has been one of the weirdest seasons, though, in NHL history. I know they're trying to get everything kind of crammed in there for the Olympic break, but, I mean, they're kind of saying the hell with injuries as well. I don't think you can really count on a team night in and night out. I mean, I'm a bit of a sports bettor from time to time, and it's just so hard to predict with any kind of consistency what team is going to take the ice every single day. You have so many teams, 3 games in 4 nights because of the kind of the compressed schedule. It's just kind of crazy as well. 11-1-2 if they win tonight, so they're up 4-2 in the first, or with 1 period to go. I mean, I thought Toronto was going to be a good team. I did think Marner would be missed. I just didn't think he'd be missed this much. But I'm just glad they finally turned around. I mean, I'll put it this way. There's very few Canadian teams to me that have a chance to get to a Stanley Cup final. There's even fewer that have a chance to win it. I think Edmonton, because of McDavid, is probably the only guy that I would consider, or the only team that I would consider as a chance to win the final. I think Toronto in the East has a chance to get there, but I don't think they're going to beat any of the teams that would make it out of the West. Winnipeg's really fallen off. Vancouver, please give me a break. Ottawa, they're terrible this year. Montreal's okay, but they're not a contender for a cup. They had a meltdown against the Mammoth out of all teams, lost 6-1, but outside of that, Mammoth are kind of an intriguing team. They're kind of a scrappy team. Some days you get the young team that just doesn't know how to get out of their own way and doesn't know how to win. Other days you get the team that puts up 6, in just a couple of periods. So, they're kind of a borderline playoff team for me. I don't think they're going to do anything once they get to the playoffs. They played the best in the East for a while. Besides Davis getting traded, mostly who else would be game-changing? For the NBA, there's not really a game-changing move I'd expect this year. As far as names that are going to get moved, Jonathan Kuminga, I think, registered his 5th trade request in the last 5 months. He can now be traded officially today as he's finally hit his restriction is now gone. Expect him to be moved. They tried to float a report that possibly the Mavericks were in on Kuminga. No, that is not accurate. The Mavericks do not view Kuminga as a nice piece next to Cooper Flagg. Now, I'm not saying they wouldn't still acquire him if he was part of a bigger deal for Anthony Davis going back the other way and Draymond being routed somewhere else. He'd be kind of the young player they'd be getting back in that deal, and they'd try to make it work. But he's not the ideal candidate they're searching for. I would expect that to be filed underneath Warriors, kind of putting out a team that has interest in their player to try to at least float more trade value in him. But as far as players, Michael Porter Jr. would probably be the most impactful one. Guard play, maybe John Morant going to Miami might mix things up there and make them at least a little bit more interesting there in Miami. But he's been terrible this year offensively. Those would be the names I'd be kind of keeping an eye out for. Then I'm looking at kind of the Herb Jones, the Trey Murphys of the world. Those, I think, are real difference-making pieces. It's just a matter of, are you willing to give up the draft capital to get it done? But I do think this year's trade deadline comes down to Anthony Davis and then the dominoes that fall after that. Say that Dallas gets the deal done with the Atlanta Hawks. They bring in Kristaps Porzingis. Do they then reroute Kristaps Porzingis to another team to take on bad salary to get more picks? There's lots of different moves that they could make. Klay Thompson, of course, is out there from the Mavericks. He will be traded. Najee Marshall's a nice contract for the Mavericks, kind of a 3-and-D wing type. If Herb Jones doesn't get traded, he's probably the best guy that could be traded in that mold. So it could be a very interesting trade deadline, but not necessarily the Luka Doncic level trade this year. Could you see the Blue Jays just saying F it and sign Framber plus trading for Donovan and JoJo? No, I don't think the Jays are going to do something like that. I do think their rotation is pretty much set. I could still see them adding one more decent-sized piece, but I don't think they're going to spend at the top of the market for a Framber Valdez, who is looking for the longest, biggest salary that he can get. that's going to likely come from the Mets. I do think he signs with the Mets. As far as trading for Donovan, if they're not going to bring in Tucker, I don't see them trying to give up pieces to bring in Donovan. Doesn't really fit with what they're looking for. If they were going to go after Donovan, why not just bring back Bo Bichette at that point and not lose the prospects? Romero, as far as a bullpen piece, I could go for that one. But as far as Donovan, I think there's other teams that'd be willing to give up more for his services. Jaw doesn't fit the Heat culture. There's no way Riley wants Jaw. I don't think any team should want Jaw. I mean, all the off the field or all the off the court stuff would basically have me saying, "Can I help you pack?" I'll put it that way. I think the Mets trade for an outfielder if they lose on Belly. I do agree with that one. I do think they'll try to make a bigger move than what's on the free agent market if they miss on Bellinger. Will the Clippers make a trade? They will. They're going to try to either package their expirings to bring in a higher value player, or they're going to try to move off of Zubats and get future assets and still try to make competitive in the play-in tournament. Those are some things you could expect out of the Clippers over the next few days. All right, trade deadline for the NBA, I believe, is in a little under, 4 weeks? A little under 3 weeks, somewhere in there. So we should start getting some real activity. Toronto might just get off bad salary with IQ plus Akbaji. I actually don't mind the deal for Quickly. I know everybody says he's overpaid, but to me, I think he's just been asked to do so much in Toronto, or at least was asked to do that much when he got there after the trade with Anunoby, and I don't think he's necessarily been terrible in the role that he's been there, but he is a little bit overpaid. Now, the Podol deal is absolutely terrible. No thank you. Please, hard pass. RJ Barrett's on not necessarily a great deal, but is at least a better value and still has a positive value in my mind. He's a nice player that I think Toronto is probably going to have to package with IQ if they're looking to get off a little bit of salary. I don't think there's a way they can move off of Podol's deal unless they're willing to attach probably multiple first-rounders, and that's if they were just trading him into some other team's cap space. Ja is still an upgrade at guard over IQ. Actually, I don't think so. Ja's numbers are terrible. In the long run, I don't think his explosiveness is there. I would probably take IQ and his salary over Ja and his salary on pretty much every team. I'm not saying he's not the better player in the long run. I think Ja has a chance to get back to being the player we saw him at the beginning of his career with the Memphis Grizzlies. But I think that explosiveness, that attacking the rim style player that we saw early in his career is gone. If he ever gets back to that, he would be better than Quickly easily. But the shooting numbers just aren't there for him. Quickly can at least shoot the three a little bit. He does struggle at time to time, a little bit of a streaky shooter, and he's small for the position, so he's not exactly the greatest defender. He's probably a player worth $15 million. He's getting paid $33, but to me, that's still a lot less investment than a $46 to $48 million player in Ja Morant. As a Sixers fan, that 27 pick for us could be good for the Suns, or for the Sixers from the Clippers. I think any pick that you get from the Clippers in the next 5 years is basically gold. So if you can make a trade with the Clippers and get one of those first rounders, or at least try to find a trade from a team who has those picks, you could get a really nice trade or a nice draft pick out of those types of moves. IQ either goes for 25 plus or he shoots the rafters out of the game. Yeah, he kind of does. I mean, he's, like I said, a very streaky shooter. Ja to the Bucks could be interesting. I mean, unless you're taking back Turner, Kuzma, it's just not worth talking about. And I don't think the Grizzlies would take back those pieces in a trade. All right, let's check out our posts here, just see if anything else is happening at the moment before we head out. Again, big news of the day, Kyle Tucker, 4 years, $240 million to go to the Dodgers. Mets final offer, 4 years, $220. The bidding got a little bit insane over the last 24, 48 hours there, which is why he gets up to the $60 million range. With the $30 million in deferred money, he's basically getting $57 million in present-day value. That is $6 million more than the biggest contract we've ever seen as far as average annual value, going to Juan Soto. Going to be crazy over the next few weeks with the NBA trade deadline coming up, NFL free agency in about a month and a half. We're going to talk a lot of that over the next couple of months as well in our Sports Talk show, so be sure to join us for that one as well. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. We'll be back live tomorrow around, trying to think. Tomorrow I work late. I'm expecting a horrendously busy day tomorrow. I would expect around this time, so around that 10:30 range is when we'll probably go live. If you guys are just joining us, be sure to check out our earlier parts of our video where we talked quite a bit about the Kyle Tucker addition there. We'll hopefully have a deal with Cody Bellinger tomorrow, Bo Bichette possibly later this week. But lots to get into there. Jays went 10 425. I mean, that would be a pretty tempting offer. I mean, if you're weighing the deal, 4 for 240 or 10 for 425, that's pretty close to the range for what we were looking at, say, 4 for 200 versus 10 for 350. Bump that up to the 4 for 240, 10 for 425. Very similar scale. I would have taken, out of those two deals, you'd basically be getting 60 or 6 more years, $180-ish million. I probably would have taken the long-term deal. I probably would have taken the long-term deal. Mainly because I'm not sure he gets that much money after that contract, but it would be close. Especially if I wanted to just see how things worked out. So if that Blue Jays offer had opt-outs after the first, second, third year, or opt-outs after the second and third year like this offer from the Dodgers does, that would have made it a very compelling offer as well. But 60 a year is insane. I mean, say he's able to duplicate this, and say he wins 2 out of the next 4 World Series there. I mean, are you really willing to let him leave if you're the Dodgers at that point? I think you'd then try to re-sign him to another short-term deal for similar money again. And then you'd be getting, $480 million over 8 years. That's insane money. But either way, congratulations to the evil empire in Major League Baseball. The Dodgers get it done, 4 for 240. Baseball is ruined, as a lot of fans out there say. I'm not going quite that far, but I will say that this certainly, I think, puts it on lock that the Dodgers are going to win the World Series. Again, if you can find it for plus out there, I mean, scoop that thing up because it ain't going to last long. All right. Appreciate you guys joining us tonight. Hit that like, subscribe. We'll be back live around 10:30 tomorrow night. Stay safe out there, everybody, and we'll see you guys at 10:30 tomorrow.